if you want to conceive, or if you don't and you just want normal hormones, don't put a phone in your pocket, period. And if you put it in your front pocket, it's probably slightly worse than back pocket because it kind of creates distance. I mean, there's an increase also in colon cancer, in prostate cancer. So you really never want to take chances. So the rule is this: if you keep it all day, every day in your pocket, in any pocket, you're doing it wrong. So start there. If you're at your office, put it in front of you. That's it. Even that distance removes 95% of the problem. So make sure that if you're at the gym, you're working out, and maybe you have to keep it in your pocket, pre-download your songs, pre-download those podcasts that you like listening to while you're going to run, and then put your phone on airplane mode.
We believe that you are strong by design, and you were made in God's image to have a strong body, mind, and spirit. You're listening to the #1 strength and health authority podcast in the world. So let's get ready to unlock your potential and transform your life in today's episode.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Strong by Design podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. This is fun. I recently was on a vacation, and this is just my second day back in the office, and it's nice to just get rolling, pick right up where I left off, and get back to doing some of our amazing podcasts here. And if you're a new listener, we thank you so much for finding our show and for choosing to listen to Strong by Design. There's so much here for you. After you listen to today's episode, I encourage you to go back and listen to hundreds of previous episodes over the years. We've had just everybody on the show at this point. I feel like, we're getting close to 300 episodes, and it's really been just a joy. I get to learn so much and talk with some truly amazing people. So there's a lot there for you to go back and binge on. If you're a past listener of the show, welcome back. Honestly, really grateful for you, and grateful for you sharing this show with friends and with family, for leaving a review if you've done that. If you haven't, please do it. Hit 5 stars. Those things help, and they add up, and they mean a lot to us here at Strong by Design, all the people involved in our show who put this show together. So I'll ask you one more thing at the very end, but I'll leave that to the end because I want to talk about our amazing guest today, Mr. Nick Pineault. And I think I got it right. He's also known as the EMF Guy, so that might be even an easier way. Nick, the EMF Guy. He's a best-selling author of the book, The Non-Tinfoil Guide to EMFs. And he's also the host of the Smarter Tech podcast. Nick is an advocate for safe technologies. He stumbled onto the dangers of electro-pollution emitted by wireless technologies several years ago, and he's been on a mission for about a decade now. At first, Nick thought this entire issue sounded a bit tinfoil or hokey, some people might say, a little off the wall or strange, but he discovered in his research and spending time learning about all of this that it's definitely not. His book is backed by best-selling author, podcaster, world-renowned fitness expert, and famed biohacker Ben Greenfield, as well as world-leading scientist and authority in the field of EMF radiation. I believe it's Ole Johansson?
Professor Ole Johansson.
Yeah. I'm going to mess those names up because Nick is from the great province of Quebec, and so when he says things, it just sounds cooler than when I say things. So, Nick, honestly, thank you so much for joining us today. So great to have you.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's a pleasure.
So you're coming from overseas here. But we're able. That's the beauty of the world we live in, is that we can still connect for a conversation. So that's terrific. We appreciate you making time for this. So to get things rolling. What exactly, because we got to set this up for people who are really unfamiliar with this, as I was. I think a lot of us are, with the things that we use in all the time, every day. We know very little about them, what they might be doing to us. What exactly does EMF stand for, and why should people care?
Yeah, so EMF stands for electromagnetic fields or electromagnetic frequencies, and it's a whole set of frequencies. It's really a spectrum that goes from 0 hertz, and that's the number of cycles per second, 0 hertz in frequency, and then you go to extremely low frequencies such as household electricity, that's about at 50 to 60 hertz, and then you might remember some of these things you keep hearing, like megahertz, gigahertz. All of these refer to frequencies. For example, 1 gigahertz is 1 billion hertz. So we are exposed to all these frequencies, and if you go up in frequency, you end up in visible light spectrum. So light has also an associated frequency, although we often talk about the wavelength of light. So it becomes even more not concerning, but confusing in that case. And also we know that if we go up even more in frequency beyond UV, for example, we get into ionizing radiation such as X-rays, or even part of UV is ionizing as well. So that means that you can get DNA damage from it. So we know that these types of radiation should be used with great care. And we figured that out not so long ago. In reality, in the 50s and 60s, they were still used in a pretty much reckless manner. You could use certain machines in shoe shops to x-ray your foot and see if the placement is right, including with kids. So not so long ago, we were using x-rays nonstop and not just in medical settings now, like nowadays. And the reason is it was not really understood that these long-term effects can happen with x-rays. Now we know better. We do better, right? So that's a type of radiation where it used to be considered safe. Now it's considered, we have to weigh the risk-benefit ratio before using x-rays. Even conventional docs these days, if you get x-rayed too much, they're going to say, you know what, I think we should wait a year. We should minimize how much radiation you're getting. If we go even if you increase the radiation even more, we get into gamma rays, for example, or nuclear radiation. And we know that this stuff you should be exposed, to nothing if possible. It's not always realistic, though. If you take a flight, for example, you're going to get a little bit of gamma ray radiation. And we know that pilots or people who are flight attendants, for example, might see their cancer risks increase if they get exposed over a lifetime. And they have mitigation strategies also for that. It's kind of a occupational hazard in their case. It's also occupational hazard if you operate x-rays machines, for example, on a dentistry standpoint or in a medical office. But they have, lead aprons and they have shielding techniques, and they try to minimize exposure, because why would you really want to get exposed to that? The principle that they use for this type of radiation, and we're going to come back to that later, is called the ALARA principle, ALARA, which is as low as reasonably achievable. That's the amount of exposure you want. So what does it mean? Well, if you can use certain strategies to minimize exposure, you should do so. And if you have exposures but zero benefits, you should try to eliminate these exposures. A benefit could be, if you get x-rayed, you see that your bone has been shattered in a certain way, and now we can heal it. That's a benefit from an x-ray, right? That's a huge benefit. If you get other types of technology, such as MRI scan and other type of medical imaging, it's very useful. So it's undeniable that we can use certain types of radiation that we know is harmful, but for good, if we use it, sparingly. When it comes to the controversy here is the impact of the non-ionizing type of radiation, where we know this type of radiation does not create direct DNA damage because the amount of energy that is delivered to the human body, any body part, is insufficient. So it was previously thought that it does not create DNA damage, so why should we really worry about it? But now, even with these blue blockers, for people listening to just the audio, I have blue blockers. I have yellow Bono-looking glasses that I wear at the computer. It's basically just for me a way to, reduce the eye strain that I get as an author when I do these interviews. But also, it's a good conversation starter, to be honest. But a lot of people are starting to realize that when you wear these blue blocking glasses in the evening, you have better sleep. How could that be? Well, it's because although the light, it is right, the blue light, especially the blue spectrum of light emitted by my screen, will hit my retina, but also my skin, and give an information to my body. This information is, I want to tell you that it's noon right now, especially with how bright our screens are. It's noon. And your body is like, well, I don't know what you're talking about because it's 10 p.m. And yet your body eventually, stays up. So it will suppress the release of your melatonin hormone, among other things. And you get these hormonal changes. And we haven't talked about DNA damage, really, right? So it does not have anything to do with DNA damage, although it can happen in certain circumstances, which is why it's still debated whether getting just exposed to these devices, whether it's your phone or your laptop or your TV, day after day after day, leads to macular degeneration sooner than we want it to happen. So that's even debated if this is happening, and whether it's DNA damage or oxidative stress. So basically the debate here is, well, does that mean that light is safe or unsafe? Well, it's probably at the amount that we're getting, it is sufficient to lower your health, to have detriments over your sleep. And if there's sleep issues, there's blood sugar regulation issues, there's longevity, hormonal issues. So everything is linked with sleep. So right there, we have a new understanding. We could say that in just the last 10 years, that visible light in itself can heal or can harm. So if you use it the wrong way, for example, very bright lights in the room, very bright screens, and you tell someone, well, try to sleep now. After being exposed to all of this, you turn off the lights and you're still amped up. You have disrupted your circadian rhythm, and now you don't know what's happening. You have insomnia. A lot of people experience these detriments. There's even bigger controversy around lower in the spectrum, the wireless radiation. So now we're talking about, imagine that the light now is not visible because we cannot see wireless, but it's a similar type of radiation, although we go in lower frequency. For example, your cell phone might be 1 to 3 gigahertz. The 5G phones, if they use millimeter waves, might go up to 30 gigahertz. That's 30 billion hertz. But we don't see it. And the argument was, again, well, it's not ionizing. It will not break your DNA. So how could it impact us? Well, now scientists are finding, and there's even, there's arguments that scientists have been finding that for 70 years because it's been debated in military research since the 1950s that, well, we have these non-thermal effects. So in other words, even if it doesn't overheat your tissue, there could be impacts. And one of them is hormonal issues. So, for example, it could suppress your melatonin just like the way light does, as if your body is perceiving wireless as a type of light or as a type of stressor that keeps the body awake. So now imagine that we replace all those bright lights with just your phone is next to your bedstand and it's right there, or maybe you slide it under the pillow like so many people do. What do you think it does to your body? Well, now increasingly we're recognizing, it's not the best idea because it might interfere with your sleep. But in the case of wireless, our exposure is much greater to even screen time, because even if you're not looking at your phone, it might be in your pocket, right? In a lot of cases, it's the case. We're very, very close to these sources of non-ionizing fields, but that are foreign, that are brand new exposures, very close to our body. So now we could go into multiple other health impacts that could happen on different body parts. So that's a science that is still to this day surrounded by controversy, but I could say that just in the last few years, and that's, years after originally writing my books, a lot of mainstream scientists and doctors have come to the same realization that, oh my God, the science is concerning enough to tell people we should aim to lower exposure, to follow that ALARA principle I talked about, and try to minimize it, because that's not something we need more of, for sure.
Yeah. Wow, I can appreciate your expertise on this. I don't even know I'm glad you were able to take a breath real quick. You were able to just rattle off so many great points and stats there. Make that distinction one more time for our listeners, because that's really, it is alarming with that whole new 5G thing that has happened in the recent years, the distinction between, or the difference between like 3G, 4G, 5G, like just so that we can kind of absorb those numbers and that increase in exposure a little bit more.
Yeah, well, a lot of people ask me or debate online, for example, well, we're exposed by sunshine all the time, and that's a lot of power, right? It is the case. Sunshine is extremely healthy. In fact, now scientists are discovering, well, you need morning sunshine for hormonal regulation. You need, midday sunshine for vitamin D production. So we're pretty much, attached to the sun. If we don't get enough sunshine, that's, you get big detriments. So in reality, our biology needs natural EMFs. But the reality is that in certain frequency ranges, we were not exposed to these specific frequencies back in ancestral days, even 100 years ago. So for example, exposure today, the average level of wireless exposure in a city, about 1 to 3 gigahertz. Nowadays, it's a quintillion times higher than 100 years ago. A quintillion times is a billion times. So people that argue, well, we've always been exposed to microwaves, which is this type of radiation. Yeah, we've been exposed to it, but to, a quintillion times lower exposure. So it's not the same. So we cannot really argue that we've been exposed in nature to this technology. When it comes to what are the common day exposure? Well, increasingly is the phones and the cell phone towers, because in my days, I remember seeing my dad in '96. He's a realtor, so he was starting in as a realtor, and he had this Nokia phone with an antenna on the top of his car and the big brick.
This is pretty much the size of the old phones.
Oh yeah, it's a shoe, but I think it was 3 or 4 pounds. I mean, it was a massive thing. It's just ridiculous. But these things, when you look at maps of the 2G and 3G networks in those days, in '96 and beyond, we had basically 2G just stands for second generation, and 3G, third generation of cellular networks. They basically upgraded the entire network with 3G and made it much more efficient. And with 3G, you could start going on the internet on these phones. And it was horrible and probably cost, an arm and a leg. So no one did it. At least, at the start of those dumb phones, I did not go on the internet. It's kind of a button you click by mistake, and you were like, oh no, it's going to cost me $120, right? Right. So in those days, if you look at the global maps of electro-pollution, if you will, how much 3G was around, it was next to nothing in '96. But if you look just a little bit later, in 2006 and beyond, we had access to 3G and then eventually 4G, which was a little bit more prevalent around 2010. And now we're installing 5G. So what does it mean? Well, now we're exposed to the 3G towers and the 4G towers and the 5G towers that are sometimes, 4G, 5G combo. So they're installed everywhere. So we have a densification of that pollution. So which is what is extremely concerning to scientists that have been trying to get the public to and regulators to change their opinions, is that back with 2G and 3G, they were concerned enough. They said we should lower exposure. 4G is installed. The levels go up. They say we should look, this is urgent. We need to lower exposure. 4G is installed, and then 5G is installed. So that's why they're always, chasing the next technological advancement. And sometimes the critics of these scientists are like, well, you guys are anti-technology. Well, it's not really about that. It's about the fact that the science was clear enough back 20 years ago, according to many of them, that we should lower exposure. What we're doing is the exact opposite with these upgrades on the system, because each time we go up in 1G, we go up in the amount of cell phone towers that are installed. And that type of radiation, cell phone towers, especially daunting to a lot of people who listen to these interviews that I do, because they say, well, what can I do about it? Well, not a lot. right? You can move, you can go in nature, go camping in the countryside, and that's fine and that's good. But if you want to live in Montreal, in Budapest, in Miami, in Paris, you're going to get exposed to a lot of cell phone towers. So in that case, it's just that the city environment becomes increasingly stressful to the body, even though, you don't change anything about your habits. But the reality, though, and that's, I guess the reason I keep going with this is that you can, even though there's external pollution, you can also take care of how you personally handle devices. And it's still important because the intensity of that exposure matters. If it's close to your body, it's quite intense. If it's further away, it's less intense. So for sure, there are concerns about the cell phone towers and the neighbor's Wi-Fi, but you should be concerned about your Wi-Fi router that is close to your bedroom, your phone that is in your pocket, your alarm clock that has a Bluetooth thing in it and you don't realize it. So all these sources stack up and it constitutes, an overall stress bucket, if you will. It's one big stressor for your biology. So the message that you could hear online is, all of this is, killing you and there's no hope. And sometimes it does sound like this. So I'm trying to avoid that. In reality, the average household has 25 different wireless devices in it. And that's average. So some people have, my colleagues, some of them are EMF mitigation specialists. They take EMF meters and they take special readings, just like, an air or mold specialist would come to your home. They take readings. One of them told me there's this mention that I analyzed with my meters. It had well over 150 different wireless devices in it, because now it's the smart home, right? Your alarm clock and your alarm bell and your alarm system and your media system has multiple types of Bluetooth thingies, and you have the phone, but now you have the speakers and this and that. Everything is interconnected. Even every light, every thermostat could be connected. So the problem with these people is that they go with all the tech that is connected wirelessly, but they can do it in smarter ways. So for example, you could wire up what you can wire up, and it's more expensive. But if you have a mansion, let's face it, some of these clients are, multimillionaires, and they say, okay, well, how can I reduce these exposures? Well, you can wire up your security system. And in fact, it's going to make it more secure because hackers could get into your Bluetooth thingies anyway. So there's good arguments against the wireless technologies for multiple reasons, but one of them is just that we are exposed to so many different devices at once. And the problem is not necessarily in all situations just one device, just your phone. It's really the cumulative effect of these, especially on your sleep, but also on your overall energy level. So when we think about what is my EMF load and how can I reduce it, and what benefits will I see really if I turn off my phone, if there's all these things around? Well, it's like asking, what benefit will I get if I choose, my cereal box will become organic because I know there's too many pesticides in that brand. Well, what benefits are you going to see? I don't know, but is it logical to try to do it? Well, yeah, because we know that more pesticides is not good for you. It's not a nutrient, right? So it is this kind of same approach that I want to bring to the table, and that scientists have been trying to argue for, is let's not be extreme about it, but how can we aim for minimization? And we're in a society today where most people look like listening to this will be in maximization of EMF mode, where they say, okay, well, how can I bring more Bluetooth speakers and the latest phone? And, oh, yes, there's a cell phone tower outside. It means that my phone will be faster, right? So we need to start thinking about, yes, the benefits of technology, being connected and your phone is cool and I can download fast, but also the potential downsides and how it can impact our biology at a cellular level.
For sure. This is certainly not something that was top of mind or something that I give much consideration to. I guess every once in a while you kind of take note of all of the Bluetooth and the wireless around you, but without thinking, how is this negatively affecting me? I mean, I have children, I mean, look at kids with the use of their devices with the ear pods or earbuds in, and they're on their tablet, or kids are using wireless computers and things at school now for learning on a daily basis for hours at a time, and using these things at a rate that we've never seen before in history. Obviously, this is probably increasing on the daily.
Yep.
What are any concerns that you have there for maybe for the parents out there, and how much exposure their children are getting?
It's a big experiment. Unfortunately, it is just one of these categories where technology is rolled out first, and then we backtrack with epidemiology. Kind of some scientists that are, I guess, a little bit blasé about the topic say we count the body bag in epidemiology. It's pretty much that. You look at tumors and people that have suffered a certain issue, or maybe we look at fertility. There's a lot of studies on fertility, but most of these studies, if not all, are made in adults. We look at sperm quality in adults. We look at, cognition. We look at, again, brain tumors, or there's even breast tumors, or some people think it might be also involved with thyroid tumors or other types of tumors of the head, such as the parotid gland or acoustic neuromas that can lead to complications, including death. So it is not technically a tumor, but it can be quite problematic, very, very dangerous. And there's, of course, the infamous glioblastoma, which is the frontal lobe, which is the deadliest type of brain cancer. There's an increase of these brain cancers in multiple countries. And now South Korea, France, maybe the UK are starting to think maybe it is phone related after all, but it took decades of phone usage to reach that. So again, that's the problem is really the delay here. What can we conclude right now is there's probably an issue for adults. But what about kids? Well, for how many years were kids exposed to Bluetooth earbuds? I don't know. When did they come out? 10 years ago? A little bit more? Let's say, even if it was 20 years, well, it doesn't talk about the long-term effects, because we know that with brain tumors, there could be a delay as much as 80 years in the increase of cancer. And of course, 80 years, you're at the end of your life. But if it's 50 years, it means exposures in your young age will contribute to you, passing away prematurely at 72. You're in good shape, but now you have a brain tumor and you're like, wait a minute, what did I do wrong? So unfortunately, we don't know the full extent of it. This is our kids, my kids. I have a 5-year-old. He's the first generation really to be exposed to these things cradle to grave. And what scientists are telling us, there's some scientists that are in pediatry, such as Hugh Taylor from the Yale University. He's very mainstream, but I don't see a lot of people heeding his advice. He's been studying this, and especially the studies around preconception exposures in pregnant women, and then the likeliness of their kids developing ADD, ADHD symptoms or allergies, seasonal allergies, food allergies. I'm not sure of exactly how they define that through the research, but he says that the research is crystal clear at this point that there's a strong correlation. So it means that maybe the generation of kids today have all these food allergies, all this asthma. We know that there's more chronic diseases. We know that their immune system seems to be, under attack or less resilient. There's an entire generation of ADD, ADHD kids. What he says is, part of the reason is probably that they got exposed to cell phones while they were in the womb or in their early days as well. Do we know that it is the case? Well, I don't know, but at this point, it's urgent that if we cannot pinpoint the culprit, because it really seems like these days, especially in medical science, they try to find one cause for one ill still. Okay, so ADD, ADHD is caused by blue number 58. So we're going to remove it from food supply, and now the disease disappears. But unfortunately, it's not just blue 58, it's all the other blues out there in the food coloring. But we realize it's also the wireless, and we realize it's also glyphosate, and it's also this and that. So we don't know exactly all the possible factors that are stressors to our kids and contributing to these problems. All we know is that these problems are here right now and that there are likely causes. When it comes to wireless, a lot of people want to disregard it. And that's the problem I have with it. If at least you take it as part of all the environmental stressors that could impact your kids, and you say, okay, well, what do we do about pesticides? Okay, we're going to try to buy organic or maybe from a local farmer that doesn't use as many pesticides. Okay, well, we do our best. What are you going to do about plastics? We're going to use, ceramic or just glass containers. Fine. Okay, cool. What do you do about wireless? A lot of people are like, oh, wait a minute. Is that really a thing? Well, when it comes to wireless, what I would do with kids is turn off the Wi-Fi at night. And that's something I would do with the adults as well. When it comes to kids at a very young age being exposed to tablets, I would prefer to not have the tablet be on Wi-Fi. So you can pre-download activities or apps, and also pre-download movies. You download them over Wi-Fi if you want, and now you make sure that the Wi-Fi icon is crossed out. It means there's no radiation. And then you hand the tablet to the kid, especially when they're very, very young. If you even follow, the American Academy for Pediatrics, you wouldn't really have screen time before 3. A lot of parents are struggling with this one because it's tempting. I can tell you that. My kid had a little bit more than that, and I'm the EMF guy, and my kid had more tablet time than that. So he had some. We tried to keep it educational, and also he was learning English because his first language is French. So I'm not here to blame parents. It's just that if you expose your kid to that radiation all the time, and your kid does not have the impeccable, incredible health that you wish for your kids, well, now we gotta take it a little bit more seriously. Both the screen time and also the EMF exposure could be contributing to behavioral changes you might have seen in your kids, or difficulty learning, or difficulty developing their cognition. So technology is not all good. And that's a big problem. Society is kind of embracing it, seeing it as progress. But in reality, even with learning, I think we're going to go back a little bit because, 1,000 tablets in classrooms and kids it doesn't work as well as as much as a magic bullet as how these things were sold in the first place. So that's really the mindset we need to have, is be a little bit more prudent about these exposures.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You summarize it really well on your website. By the way, your podcast again is the Smarter Tech Podcast. And on there you say, and I quote, "Is smart tech the new stupid? ? Tech addiction, sleep disturbing blue light, electromagnetic radiation, and goldfish level attention span. How can we do better?" And we are sold that all of these things are just wonderful and make life better. And in a lot of ways it does, but there are consequences. There is another side to this. There's a downside to this, and it could be our health. It could be our awful attention span that we adults are passing on to our children. This addiction that we're creating for ourselves. And I had this discussion just with my wife the other night about being better at, when I walk in the door at the end of the day, putting my phone away. Just put it out of view. Put it somewhere where it's not even tempting to be used. I mean, I'm on a computer for a living, for gosh sakes, like I can break away and be 100% available to my wife and kids when I walk in the door. I should be tempted to look at the score of the game or anything else. I should be all in on my family. And I think, there's, besides the radiation side, there are other consequences to the technologies in our life, and 100%. I'm sure you're 100% familiar with all of those things. Yeah. It's like, don't you even find yourself, you're driving in the car and your phone might be sitting in the cup holder driving, and you come to a stoplight. What do? I'm already bored, so bored I need to reach down and pick my phone up and look. To what? Yeah. I just looked at it 30 seconds ago at the last stoplight. You know, it's like we have no ability just to rest and to break away and unplug. I feel that's part of it, you know?
Well, and it was by design. It is important to say that, you know, a lot of people, I think, have realized by now that the processed foods have been designed in a way that's addictive. I recommend the book Salt, Sugar, Fat by an investigative journalist that is just completely mind-blowing. To me, it changed my life, this book. Salt, Sugar, Fat is just the story of how the food giants have created like the Oreos or, you know, chips and things like that, and how the food scientists I think it's the Mornell Institute for Senses, something like that. There's like a scientific institute that is number one or almost in the world in developing these things. And they were, you know, they found the perfect amount of salt, sugar, fat, and flavoring to make it as addictive as humanly possible. Looking at the reaction of people, whether it's, you know, I don't know, biomarkers or how their eyes even change or how they salivate. I don't know, but they perfected it. And when it comes to technology, the interfaces and the reward systems, they are hitting on those, you know, those dopamine needs that we have, like feeling like, oh, I post a picture and then, oh yeah, 100 people said yes. They liked me, right? And they kind of honed in into what makes humans excited. But the problem is when you hit those pathways too much, you become depressed, and now you're like a zombie and looking at it, and you don't feel as good. And oh, I didn't want 100 likes, I wanted 500 now, you know. So you're kind of addicted to it. So that's another big aspect to it. And I must say, when it comes to human performance, put the phone away if you work out. I mean, I know that some people at least put it on airplane mode. I see still people in the gym, and each time I find myself judging them. I shouldn't, you know, they're just addicted to their phone like everyone else. So I guess it's a like normal behavior these days. But I see a lot of people like one rep and then it looks like they're down there like 25 minutes. I'm like, why are you here? You're spending all this time, and there's no way you can bring intensity in your workouts. And also, because I'd be remiss if I don't talk about this impact. Phone in the pocket and testosterone or fertility, because men will be interested in this one. There are increasingly scientists such as Dr. Andrew Huberman, who's very well known on the internet for his podcasts. Huberman recently said on one of the podcast episodes that are reserved to his members, he said that he reviewed the data on phones in a pocket and testosterone lowering, and he said that the data is even more clear than BPA and plastics. It is an endocrine disruptor, and he said that with fertility it's very clear as well. So he said, you know, if you want to conceive, or if you don't and you just want normal hormones, don't put a phone in your pocket, period. And if you put it in your front pocket, it's probably slightly worse than back pocket, because it kind of creates distance, especially with the testes. But I mean, there's an increase also in colon cancer, in prostate cancer. So you really never want to take chances. So the rule is this: if you keep it all day, every day in your pocket, in any pocket, you're doing it wrong. So start there. If you're at your office, put it in front of you. That's it. Even that distance removes 95% of the problem. So make sure that if you're at the gym, you're working out, and maybe you have to keep it in your pocket, pre-download your songs, pre-download those podcasts that you like listening to while you're going to run, and then put your phone on airplane mode, because I just cannot, you know, especially people that are looking for an extra edge, professional athletes, you know, at that level, they're looking for an extra edge. Well, try to minimize phone exposure and try to turn off that phone before you go to bed and see how you recuperate, because a lot of athletes now have realized that this has an impact. My book got read by Paul Chek, Charles Poliquin before he died, a few months before he died, and unfortunately I was devastated, especially because he was such a great man, but I was in communication with him, and he told me how he told every athlete not to keep the phone in the pocket. He was on top of these things because Poliquin is known for all these gold medalists and professional athletes under his wing. He was looking at every single little thing that can make a difference. He was on top of cell phones before I was. He was probably decades before me. And I'm just 35. He was a veteran in this space. So all these professional athletes, Ben Pekulski, one of the most known bodybuilders, at least several years ago he was, Jason Ferrugia also, I went on his podcast. Jason said, yes, of course, I tell everyone, I don't think that stuff is good for you. And of course, he was super annoyed at people who were kind of texting at the gym and these kind of things. Ferrugia is like super focused, right, during workouts. I don't doubt a second in really how his style is. So all these coaches that coach these high level athletes are recognizing that that the phone is just poison for your mind if you're trying to work out and stay focused. It's probably not good for your sleep either. And now we know it's not good for fertility or even hormonal production. So for the athlete, it's a tool that you can use, but it can very quickly also be detrimental to what you're trying to achieve. So I think it's very important, especially for athletes, that even if you're not getting the effect immediately or you cannot quantify it, just be prudent about it and try to minimize that exposure, especially during sleep. Because if you're training, 2 a days and you have this packed schedule, your body is just shattered at the end of the day. You want to make sure you have as much quality sleep as possible, even if you're not getting the full 8 or whatever hours your coach is telling you to have. Make sure that the phone is turned off and that the Wi-Fi is turned off, and that you try to get these devices that are wireless outside the bedroom. So that's kind of the human performance aspect of this, but I think it's super important because it's something where when I talk to the best coaches on the planet, they each say, oh yeah, we know that. And well, that's bizarre to me because the average person does not. So I don't know if it's part of their secrets, their secret sauce or something like that, but they're well aware of this. And I don't know if athletes actually do it, but they should really, because there's benefits of minimizing the cell phone exposure.
What's your take on the craze with the smartwatches? Obviously, for several years now, I have been using one and using it as my alarm clock, right? Yeah. So my smartwatch wakes me up with a nice vibration, and I don't need to have my phone near me in bed. Make a distinction there. Which one's better? The phone within reach on the nightstand, or the smartwatch on your wrist? Yeah,
well, there's more than 2 choices here, because your phone can be on airplane mode and also have the alarm clock. And now it really depends on how you want to use your phone. If it's the only number you can be reached at, and you have, teenage kids, they start going out at night a little bit later, and you're like, okay, I'm going to head to bed. And if they call me, right, I need a lift or there's an emergency, I won't put my phone off, right? That would be irresponsible. So in that case, the phone needs to be as far away from your pillow as possible. So maybe the other side of the room, on the floor, whatever, charging. So that way it's not bothering you. The EMFs will be much lower than if it's right next to your head. And then you can be called, right? You can be reached if there's anything. And that's fine. Even some people just in general want to be reachable, and I respect that. But as far away as possible. When it comes to the smart watches, this Garmin could be Bluetooth. I use it for running. I turned off the Bluetooth personally. I will use the wire to sync it, and I don't use the Bluetooth function. So some of these gadgets can be turned off, or you can turn off the radiation. If you don't need it, turn it off, generally speaking. Oura Ring. Oura Ring is a good one because it can store the data locally inside the ring. So it is not emitting all the time if you keep it on airplane mode. So what I do is I wear it all day, every day, and I track my sleep and my HRV during the day, whatever it is. And in the morning, I will get it out of the airplane mode and connect it wirelessly to my phone, dump the data, and then put it back on airplane mode, which means that now the radiation is off. This is how I recommend doing it. A lot of users probably don't do it because they don't know better, but this is how I would do it, because again, you're minimizing. I don't need my Ring to talk to my phone every second. To me, that's useless. Like, I don't need to be there on my phone and say, oh, my HRV is increasing. And like, I look at it once a day, just looking at my overall recovery, how many hours did I sleep, and am I honest about how much I sleep? And sometimes I look at my trend. Last week you slept 6 hours and a half, and I'm like, maybe that's why I'm fatigued at the moment. Yeah, obviously I don't sleep enough. Okay, I adjust. So that's an example. There's also, I think, certain Fitbits or certain Apple Watches can be put on airplane mode, but you gotta, it is tricky, because you gotta look at the owner's manual and kind of figure things out. But I don't know what's worse. To me, I don't recommend wearables, but a lot of people still use them. But I try to minimize their use. And this also goes for the headphones. And we talked about earbuds a little bit, especially athletes are going to be all over earbuds that are Bluetooth. If you use them, a few hours per week, that's one thing. If you use them in the ear as a fashion statement 24/7, and almost during your night, like I guess some people listen to meditation apps and then fall asleep and it's still there, I don't consider that a good use, because you're not minimizing, you're kind of maximizing. So I would, use it if during workouts you want to be focused, you want to have the Bluetooth, and this is not an option because they keep, you keep slapping them, or it's going to even end injure you because you're doing snatches or something. Don't, okay, keep your Bluetooth. But the rest of the time, you're in an office environment in front of a computer. Why would you have Bluetooth? Right? You can have the wire. It's not that annoying. So try to minimize. And sometimes what I tell people is to get two pairs. The wired ones, you try to maximize and use them in situations where you don't really need the Bluetooth. But again, it's really, you need to identify these points in your life where you're like, okay, well, I could do better, and start having fewer of these devices, especially the ones that touch my body directly.
Oh, that's great. Man, I was going to ask you, what are some of your best suggestions and tips, and you just unleashed. So, I mean, you answered like every little question I had about usage and stuff. And I think, a good place to start, a lot of people are like, wow, there's so many things I could do. But as you said, just make a few small changes. Don't always have your cell phone in your pocket. Leave it somewhere. Leave it in the car. Like I coach baseball for my son. I don't need that phone on me for a 2-hour practice in my pocket. So I put it in his bag, that has all his gear, or I'll leave it in the car for those few hours. I try not to ever have my phone on me when I'm at the office. It's over on my desk on the far side. I don't need that in my pocket at all times. I love, just the use of the airplane mode, or downloading things onto your device so that you can put it in airplane mode, or not need Wi-Fi access all the time, everywhere. And, those just start with a few simple changes. I was interested in what you were going to say about the earbud, because I only would wear those when working out. And like you said, a few hours a week, probably not detrimental, to your health. But if it was 6 to 8 hours a day, now maybe that's something that you should be thinking about. If you're wearing it as a fashion piece in your ear, like we would see so many people at the grocery store, they don't go anywhere without these things in their ears, and it is a bit alarming. But I think being a little bit more aware, a little bit more attentive to a lot of the things that you mentioned, and then just making some small changes can have long-term positive effect on your health. And it's just, I just applaud you for what you're doing and sharing the other side of it, because we're so inundated with all this technology every single day in our face, how much we need to be plugged in, and we need to know that there could be some long-term downsides to all of this connection to everything that we can't see, the unseen realm, so to speak, right? So
exactly.
Yeah. So your book still doing quite well. Lots of reviews. People are probably interested. It's the non-tinfoil guide to EMFs. You actually have a nice simple link that people can use. It's just getbook.at/EMF. Is that maybe one of the best resources?
Yeah, it's going to send you to Amazon anywhere worldwide. It can be shipped from Europe as well. So we do have people from Australia even buying it. And I think now it prints in Australia and ships locally. So it's a little bit cheaper. So it's through Amazon. There's the ebook version on my website. But the paperback, I think, is a good thing. You can share with family. Some people keep it in the living room to scare their guests away or or I don't know. It's a good conversation starter. There's some people love learning about that stuff. Some people, have a love-hate relationship, and some people just hate it. Oh no, I don't want to look at it. So,
that's right.
It's a topic that is still and will still be quite controversial in the future. My book is still a good resource, although, I'm working on my second book. It's going to come out I think in 2 years, but it's going to be quite more extensive with everything I've learned in the last years. There's so much stuff to talk about, ways to mitigate also. And also the science has become increasingly credible and hard to deny. A lot of people that are skeptical, I've heard all sorts of things. A lot of it is, oh well, no, that stuff cannot, it cannot do this. It cannot. And I say, okay, well, why do you say that? Oh well, that's because the FCC says so. Well, okay, I understand your position, so you're following what is said on the website, but my argument is they're getting it wrong. And that's the argument of scientists, right? I'm just, the messenger of what is happening. And these scientists are independent, but the FCC is considered, a completely captured agency, captured by the industry they're supposed to regulate. So now, right. And usually at this point, they're gone from the discussion. Right, so a lot of people are just misinformed. That's what I want to say. It's not like they're doing to do harm or anything like that. It's just that they have been convinced one way, which is the way that is convenient. All wireless and all these gadgets are safe and it's fun and we shouldn't worry about it. The reality is in the middle, They're probably not safe. We don't know what the safe dose is. We don't even have this information yet. And maybe it will come where we'll say, okay, well, we got to lower these exposures and maybe we recommend the population to keep phone calls to 15 minutes per day. I don't know if we're going to come to kind of these public health recommendations, but at the moment, all we know is minimizing is intelligent. And I think that's a fair message. And it's a position that is hard to attack also. Just, think what you want about the risks, but at least if there could be risks, I'm happy because now you have informed consent. Oh yeah, I'm you know what, Nick, I'm gonna burn my family jewels a little bit. I don't care about it. Okay, well, good for you. But I mean, most people, if they say, I could lower testosterone, that's a head scratcher. I don't like it. Most men will be like, okay, yeah, I hate you for it, but I think I'm going to keep it in front of me. A little bit more prudent. And then it's not like, are you going to see a difference in your testosterone next week? There's no guarantee of that. It's just, you're trying to lower the risks that we think or that we know could be lowering your testosterone. So now if you're having good results, it's probably not because you do one thing right. It's probably because you do multiple things right. If you include wireless or EMF mitigation or reduction in your overall strategy, I think it's intelligent. It doesn't cost a lot of money to turn off Wi-Fi at night. It takes 3 seconds. Putting your phone away doesn't cost money, So it's easy. So at one point, I think in the discussion, it becomes almost stupid not to do it or not to try it because it's almost an argument over nothing. Most of the mitigation strategies are easy. They're free. They don't require a lot. The advanced stuff, blue blockers, okay, yeah, you're starting to invest. There are special cases you can use. There's many things we didn't talk about. And some of it is in the book and some of it is on my podcast where, okay, you want to go further? Yeah, there's more. And some people are quite sensitive to that stuff, to that technology, and they feel like their health is suffering. People with chronic diseases. But there's a wide difference in health in professional athletes and like the healthiest people on the planet or the high performing, and then people with chronic disease. And I would have, different recommendations. If you have chronic disease, probably you're trying to avoid everything that is a stressor to your body, and in which case it's even more important to heed this advice.
That's right. Oh, wonderfully said. I can appreciate again just how well versed you are in this. I love that people who have listened and want to know more, want to learn more, they can easily go get your book, The Non-Tinfoil Guide to EMFs. You can go to getbook.at//EMF or check out Nick's podcast, the Smarter Tech Podcast. Go listen to him, listen to more conversations about this if you want to know more before investing in his book. But thank you again, Nick, for making time for a conversation today on Strong by Design. So glad to have you. I've known of you for many, many years. Obviously, you've been in the online space for so long. So, CriticalBench and you have had an affiliation. And so it's just great to have you on our show finally. And just appreciate what you're doing in the world. Keep doing it. And look forward to your second edition book, or maybe by a new name, because things have changed since the book came out.
Yeah, well, a spoiler for you, it's called The Still Non-Tinfoil Guide to EMFs. I think it's going to be the title because, it hasn't changed. And it's even less tinfoil would be the better title because, the science is just shaped in a way that is even more convincing. I think that the way that the information is going to be organized will be even more efficient as, an expose on the topic, where it's going to be hard to read that book cover to cover and say, oh no, there's nothing to see here. Especially if you're versed into science and many different things that are happening, I think that a lot of people will appreciate it. And also, if you're not that well versed into science, I want to make it even more actionable, where you can take, the take action section and just start making changes and see the benefits.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, looking forward to that for sure. Thank you, listeners, for tuning into Strong by Design. Again, if you're new, hope you enjoyed that. Now you can go back and listen to all of our past things, and we do release a new episode every single week on Wednesdays. Sometimes we even release a second episode in a week on Saturdays on occasion. So we're just so fortunate to have all of you. If you haven't yet left a rating or a review, please do so. That really does help us out. And think of somebody that you could share this episode with. Sharing our episodes and our show with friends and family members, coworkers, really does help it grow and reach more people. Thanks again so much. We'll be back next week, as always, on Wednesday on Strong by Design. God bless.
Thank you so much for listening to the Strong by Design podcast. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe so that more people can find out about our show. Plus, you don't want to miss any future episodes with the amazing guests and topics we have lined up for you.